thanks for answering all those questions. We're going to get into the show and tell part of it. I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to, this is the first time Cameron's seen it, so this would be cool. Let me see if I can share it here. First thing I want to do is I'm going to show you how I set up thing, and I know I'm not doing it exactly like you, but and I'm trying to see like maybe this is how other people do it too. But
I'm just going to start off by saying there's no one way to set up your campaigns.
That's good to know.
There's a ton of different structures that you can use. So there's not like one, this is the way you should be running your campaigns. That's not the way I'd look at it. There's a lot of different factors that can go into it just as far as like how you want to manage them, which you kind of learn just through experience too. But one mistake I see people doing is over analyzing. What should I set my bid at? What should, should I do this campaign? Should I do this bidding strategy? Instead of just jumping into it and getting some experience with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so we can learn a lot just by doing it, right? Instead of kind of over-analyzing. And I think a lot of people do that. I know I do. Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna choose this one, sponsored products. I've never actually used sponsored brands, but do you use both?
I'm primarily sponsored products. Sponsored brands can be useful. It's not going to be something a beginner would start with. That's going to be more once you've, I guess, like, I wouldn't say exhausted, but really filled out your campaign structures with sponsored ads, and then you're using sponsored brands to supplement.
Right.
Something like, and it's not every product's going to really justify that. If you're not getting the order volume, I mean, at least, I don't know, I would say I'm not even going to consider sponsored brands until I'm selling 20, 30 units a day, probably. Wow. Even on my best seller that hits hundreds of units a day into peak seasons, I really don't do a ton of sponsored brands. It's a little bit more involved where you have to come up with the creatives. So that's going to be like the copy with it and video. There's video ads for them. Images. You don't have to do it with sponsored products. Sponsored products is what 95% of the ads that you're going to see and really be concerned with are. But sponsored brands can definitely be useful. But they're going to be more
complicated.
It's more complicated. They have different goals. They're not really as performance oriented. They're going to be more for like reach, that top of funnel versus that bottom of funnel. I think what most people are looking for with their advertising, like getting sales and profit.
That's what I want.
Not say you should not necessarily like that should be your goal with ads is like to be profitable with them, because I don't think that's the case, but just some differences there. But yeah, sponsored products, anyone just getting started watching this, sponsored products is what you want.
Cool. All right. That's what we're going to do. So you can see here, I got my ad groups here. I'm going to take one of the ASINs that I know. I saved it here. This is one that I recently did, so it has no sales on it. I just released this. I think people might have seen this on Twitter. I'm going to add it here. So it's a standard shirt. I have it at $19.99. This is what I typically do. I just put the name of my product here. So I'm just going to put Japanese koi fish. Whoops, I got to spell that right. And I like to do something like this. So. And I know I could put the ASIN in here too, but this is what I do, the ad group name.
Let's have you just go through the whole thing, and then we'll just go down again. Like,
that's what I was going to say. Yeah. So the next thing I do is automatic targeting. I don't like doing the full bid. I like doing this one and then kind of setting my bids. Sometimes I leave it at 75, but that's really high for me. So a lot of times I do, like 35 or something like that. I don't know. Typically, I don't do 75 cents. I think by default, that's what they want. I don't use the negative keyword targeting because I don't know how to use that, honestly, for a brand new one. And then so this is what I do here. I just copy this, and I know these are two different things, but I make it the same thing because there's only one thing in there, and I do $5, and then I hit launch campaign. All right. So that's my basic how I do it. So let's see what kind of things that I could do to improve, or maybe you can tell me some other things. Yeah.
Sure. So the ad group name, I think there's a lot of different ways you can do your naming. I think the campaign name is definitely more important. So maybe we start there with a campaign name.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do that.
And we have our product. Like there's only so many ways you can do that. There's only one product though. I think that's important for unless you're doing the lottery style campaign, the vast majority of time, especially for merch on demand products, you're going to have just a single ASIN inside of one campaign.
Yeah.
And there's a few different reasons why, but mostly it's so you're as granular as possible and all the data within that campaign can be attributed to that single ASIN. As soon as you start adding other ASINs, the data gets a lot murkier. You can't tell what goes to what product. So you want to know that this data is associated with that ASIN. Now, if you're like a seller, central seller, FBM, where there's different variations of products, you could maybe get away with some different variations inside of a single campaign. But even there, generally the best practice is a single ASIN inside of a single campaign.
Okay, good. That's what we did. Awesome.
So for the campaign name, so what I like to think of with a campaign name is having a naming structure where I can look at the campaign name and know exactly what's inside that campaign without opening it. So I don't have to know I know exactly what the product is, what I'm targeting, and what type of campaign it is. So that's kind of just overall broad. So what I always have in the campaign name, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this, is having the ASIN in the campaign name somewhere. I have it at the beginning. And the biggest reason for this is so you can search for when you're searching your advertising, especially when you start having some bestsellers pop up that you really want to pay attention to, you can just plug in the ASIN into the search bar and it's only going to show the campaigns associated with that.
Yeah, because they could have multiple Japanese koi fish, right? Designs. And so it would, and then you have to like, which one is that? So there's one ASIN per product, so I wouldn't have multiple.
Yeah, it's going to give you a unique identifier for it instead of like, even if you had that product and you're like, oh, I want to look at the campaigns for this product. Now with just that title, it's like, well, what do I need to type in to refine my search to just have that product? It's a little harder to do once you have the ASIN, especially once you start building out some structures. You could have several campaigns, even dozens of campaigns for a single product. It's just going to filter all those to that single product. So that's the first thing. The other thing I like to do, and I'll usually use like a separator, like a dash, or you could, I don't know, dash is usually what I use, but you can do something like that. But that's how I separate my different things. I'll put in what type of campaign it is. And I'll
like manual campaign?
Yeah. So I'll sponsored product auto or sponsored product manual, and I just initial those or turn into an acronym SPA or SPM.
Oh, like
so
right after?
It's another way. Yep. So that'll be my next thing, SPM or SPA. So this would be an sponsored product auto. And then I want to put in a little further what type of campaign it is. So with an auto, it's a little more broad. You could probably just do SPA. And that's it. Now, what I do for a lot of my auto campaigns, especially for products that are a little more mature or like my campaigns are getting a little more mature, I'm going to segment my auto campaigns where I'll actually have multiple auto campaigns, one for each targeting group, which we'll touch on here in a minute. If we're just going to have all these in one, I'm just going to put SPA all.
Are you talking about these targeting groups, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Those are auto campaign targeting groups. So I'll actually have just one of those active in each campaign. So I'll have 4 different campaigns, usually 3.
So you would turn some of these off and you'd say close match inside in the campaign. And then you come back and do another one with loose match and do another one with substitutes and so on.
Yeah, 100%.
That's really targeting. So you know which one is actually working, and so you don't have to. I like that.
Well, there's
that.
Cool. The biggest reason for that is, and this gets a little more maybe advanced than we intend for this specific section of it, but this goes back to like your data and how Amazon buckets their different data. So you have all these different silos of data, and I say siloed because they're like connected, but really they're separate. So you have your search term silo, you have your keyword data, you have your placement data, and they're all kind of interconnected and they all feed up to like your campaign and your placement data, but you can't attribute your keywords to your placement data, for example, if you have more than one of these active. So if you have all 4 of these targeting groups active, for example, if you go to look at your placement data, so placement data is an option at the campaign level. So you make this, you change these settings on the campaign level. So everything inside that campaign has those settings. But and same thing with looking at that data. If you're looking at your, and there's 3 different placements, there's top of search, rest of search, and product pages. When you're looking at that data, it's going to aggregate all of those targeting groups or keywords if it's a manual campaign together. So you can't look at top of search and say, okay, this top of search is for close match. This is for loose match. It's just combining all
because I didn't do it in the beginning. It's all combined, right?
But that's okay. Like, honestly, like, this is how I would start. This is how I start all my automatic campaigns. That's going to only be once I get enough sales data or one of these become a clear winner. I'm going to turn off the other ones and create different campaigns.
And then
for
would you let's say I did this and I hit launch campaign and I found out that maybe loose match is giving me the most sales. Would you just come in here and turn off these other ones? Or would you start
if I was looking to segment them, I'm going to keep the best performing one because campaign history is one of the most important factors in your campaign performance.
Another one. Okay.
I wouldn't start, if loose match is doing the best, I'm not going to turn that off and start another loose match. I'm going to keep all that data in there. I'm going to start new campaigns for the other match types. And this goes for like keywords too. With manual campaigns, you could do a similar type of thing. So if you do decide to segment something, it's like keep your best performing thing. Nice. Whatever has like, maybe not even necessarily the best performing, but if there's something that's close, whatever has the most data. So it has the most orders, that's what you want to stick with because that's really important to Amazon. And
then you would change it here, right, to let you know that it's loose match now. This campaign
so I would add in so SPA loose, SPA close, SPA substitute. Complement I usually ignore. It doesn't seem to get traction for me.
You know what? I've noticed that too. I always make this super low or turn it off because I never get any sales. I get sales from these, but I almost never get a sale from...
It's for whatever reason, I don't know if that's just merch on demand products. I'm assuming that's the case. I'd imagine for other types of products, it probably works fine. So it's worth testing, especially if you're in other product categories. I don't think for merch, you're missing too much if you just skip it. So it saves me one campaign I have to create.
I'm going to turn it off.
So totally
lowering your vid instead of turning it off. All right.
Anyway. And then for the campaign name to finish that off, usually I'll put like another separator, and then like your keywords is fine. Usually I'll just copy and paste the product title. Just to have some keywords if I wanted to search by whatever niche that happened to be in.
Now I don't have to know the standard t-shirt because I have this here, right? So do you just put the title?
You wouldn't have to necessarily. The title length, I don't even know what the character limit is. It's pretty generous, so I don't worry about it too much. I just copy and paste the title.
That makes it easier to try and figure out what to type in there. Okay.
Yep. So that's totally fine for an auto campaign. If we got into more like manual campaigns, I'm going to put kind of furthering like what that is targeting. So if that's like just a broad match campaign, I'm just going to have broad in there. Or if it's what I call a testing campaign.
Or the keywords that you're using or something?
No? Possibly. If it's a single keyword campaign, if I only have one keyword in that campaign, I'll put that keyword in that with some other designation. Like I do single keyword campaigns and I initial those SKC. So I know exactly what's in there. I can look at the campaign name, know exactly what the campaign's for.
Without going into it. That's nice.
Yep. And I'll do other things too. Like I use like different keywords for different types of campaign goals. So it might be like priority is something that I use. Like if this is a campaign that's a priority, I'll have that as a keyword. So I can use that as a search as well. So I can look at, hey, these are the ones I want to look at right now. Or you can do other things too. You could put in a target ACOS if you wanted to. Like this is your goal for the ACOS if you have variable ACOS across different products. I don't typically, usually mine are around the same target, so I don't bother with that. So there are different ways you could do it. But really the goal is just like knowing what this campaign is for, what it is, what it's targeting.
So you don't have to dig into it to find out these things. You know right away what it is.
Yeah, especially if you're using Amazon's ad console, the default, like you have to keep clicking in to change things. Like it can get pretty tedious. So this is totally fine for an auto. And auto is, we kind of skipped over it. Like you selected an auto campaign. That's what you want to start with for
Right
every
here.
single product. Every single
Okay.
product should have an auto campaign as
Awesome.
at least as like a harvesting type of campaign where you're collecting the search term data to then determine what keywords to use for a manual campaign.
Okay.
So, and I know some people have like, well, manual's got to be better because you're putting in the keyword and Amazon algorithm doesn't work. That is not the case.
Okay. Good to know.
Huge amount of my order volume comes from auto campaigns. They perform really well. Amazon's got tons of data. Let them use it.
Do you ever put an end date here or no?
No, I don't.
Okay. I don't
There's
either.
not a campaign. I don't have any arbitrary dates. Got to be one of the worst things to like decide to end a campaign unless it's very specific with like a
how would you
holiday.
know?
I could see possibly, but even then,
right.
that could possibly, or you have like Prime Day or something like that. You have a very specific window you're targeting. But I think for the vast majority of campaigns, that's not.
So you would leave it on, like, I know a lot of people, me included, I've done this before. I would leave ads on until I know like the shopping season is over. You know what I mean? Like Q4, nobody's going to buy. Well, we think nobody's going to buy, or there's less buyers, I should say, or people wanting to buy after maybe 2 week or a week before Christmas, right? Because you should have
I
bought
never
it,
turn
but-
off my ads. I don't turn off any of my campaigns. I
Good.
will lower the budgets. I'll lower the bids. I'll manage my spend and performance that way. I'm not going to turn off the campaigns.
Not totally off.
There's still incremental sales you can pick up. I mean, there's probably some cases and scenarios out there and whatever edge case that you come up with. Well, what about in this situation? Like there's always like an exception to like these aren't rules. This is just generalities. I don't turn off my campaigns.
Okay, good to know. And is $5 a good budget to use for most people?
It's fine to start with. Yeah. Honestly, like bids, budgets, it doesn't really matter what you start with. Like, don't overthink this. Just like get started because you're going to optimize all this after the fact. It doesn't matter what we start with.
Okay.
Something you're comfortable with, I would say.
I like $5, but they say here, right, most advertisers start with $10. I'm like, I don't know. $5 should be good.
I mean, you'll see some things with Amazon like to get you to increase your spend a little bit more. And they're probably right. Like most advertisers do start with like higher budgets, especially if you consider like merch is a different beast when it comes to selling on Amazon. We're not quite like other sellers and other products that have. Another seller might have one product that they're launching that they spent $20,000 on to bring to market.
So they're going
to spend a lot more on that launch where, I mean, we're creating products that cost virtually nothing, or we have thousands of them. It's just a different ball game.
That makes sense.
So it's okay to start with a low budget. You start with $2 if you want. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, it's totally fine.
All right. Let's go up here. Dynamic bids, dynamic fixed bids, up and down. I've heard up and down, but I don't know who I heard it from. So that's fine?
It can be okay. I usually do down only for pretty much most of my campaigns.
Okay.
I recently did a video on the whole bidding stuff and how that works. I got a more detailed one coming out because it's. Do we want to talk about like the auction?
No.
And I don't know. That's probably a little more complicated.
We'll just say
we'll do another video on the auction and how it works. But down only is going to be
high
level. I wouldn't necessarily say it's high level because it's super important to understand just how bids work with it because it doesn't like what you put into your bid isn't really what Amazon uses with the dynamic bidding. But dynamic down only is going to be probably your easiest to optimize and consistent.
Good to know.
So I would stick with that for
I'm going to do that from now
things.
on.
But they all have their place. They have up and down. There's fixed bids. There's even rule-based bidding now that some accounts have. I don't use it because I optimize my own stuff. But so there's some other options. But yeah, down only is a pretty safe bet.
Awesome.
That's what I'd recommend for vast majority of campaigns.
Okay, great. I saw this as optional, so I'm not choosing it. That's fine, right?
Yes. So any of your negative targeting, keywords or product targeting, I would
even this one
not
optional.
Put anything in unless you have a very good reason to. So this would be something like if you, let's say you had different variations of this shirt that are targeting the same niche. You've already been running campaigns. So you have data that says, hey, these search terms don't work. Or you just, maybe you have other campaigns where like you've noticed like these keywords just don't work. The negative targeting is going to say, don't show my ad on these products or don't show it for these search terms that those negative keywords target. But if you don't have the data, leave it blank.
Yeah. And this is a brand new one, so we don't have any data. So that makes sense. And we already talked about this automatic targeting. You said usually what you do is, choose one of these so that you can kind of get data on each one.
I usually start with all of them.
Oh, okay.
On, and then if
when you
I have a
figure
product
it out,
that's really selling, that this campaign's doing 50, 100 orders a month, where it's worth turning into multiple campaigns, I'll do that.
Okay.
But yeah, for new sellers, this is your first campaign. Leave them all on. Totally fine.
Automatic. We said that's the one we choose, and let's see. We're back at the top now. So
yeah,
one ASIN, one campaign, one product.
Ad group name. Usually what I'll do, you can put in the ASIN. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I don't know that I have like consistency with that because I can search it with the campaign.
This is kind of buried. You have to click one more time to get to the ad group name, right?
Yeah. Yep. But I'll put in my targeting with what's inside that ad group. So usually that's going to be like targeting. So, but usually more for manual campaigns, I'm going to have like an ad group for broad match only keywords. I'm going to have an ad group for phrase match only keywords. So I'll put phrase, I'll put exact, I'll put broad. Or product targeting. That's what'll be in my ad group name.
Can you do multiple ad groups for one campaign? Is that how that works?
Yes, so you can do up to 10,000 ad groups within a single campaign. Not recommended for most situations, but it is possible.
So let's say this, well, maybe not, because you already said that this one has the targeting in it. I was thinking, would it be wise to do this and then each ad group's a different target, if you will?
I don't see much of an advantage, and this goes back to those silos of data and how that data aggregates together. For me, what's important with the automatic campaigns and then putting them in different campaigns instead of all in one is to take advantage of placement adjustments. And that happens at the campaign level. So having multiple ad groups within that same campaign doesn't give you that segmented data because it's still funneling up to that single campaign placement data. So for me, I want those in different campaigns.
So
anytime I want that, anytime I want that data as granular as possible or to really take advantage of placement adjustments, you want as few things as possible in it.
Okay. So
here's why. Just to give you paint an example of what that can look like. Let's say you have two keywords, or let's say just this auto campaign.
Two targets or
two targeting groups, or all four of them. Doesn't matter. You have one of them that's just going gangbusters on top of search, just absolutely crazy. It's got a 10% ACoS. It's doing, 30 orders every couple days, whatever it is. But then you have another targeting group that's just doing terrible at top of search. It's got a 200% ACoS. That's going to all funnel up together, and it might look like your top of search is not performing well. You're getting a 50% ACoS. You need to lower your bids, when in actuality, it's just one of those is dragging it down, and the other one's performing well, and that's not going to surface. But if you have those separate, you can see that data. That top of search data is applying to that exact targeting group, and then you can make better decisions off of that.
Awesome. Well, good. So I think we're done with this one, this new campaign. Anything we're missing before we go on to one that I already have?
Bids, going? I'd say we could talk about bids. We kind of touched on it. It doesn't really matter what you start with.
This one. Yeah.
I would say something that you're comfortable with. If you want to be risk averse, you want to be conservative. I know a lot of new advertisers are.
I do.
Start with low bids. It's totally fine. Start with 5 cents.
What's a low bid?
5 cents, 10 cents, 20 cents in that range. Totally fine. So I would optimize this. One of the most, Amazon ads does not set it and forget it. You can't just launch this campaign, come back a month from now and see how it went. Especially for a new campaign, you need to keep your eyes on it and make adjustments every 2-3 days at least.
And sometimes I see, so this is a new one, so Amazon's not suggesting bids, but if I did one of these, a new campaign for an ad that's already getting sales or has been out, sometimes I see the Amazon suggested bids. What is your thought on that? Should we just click it and say, I should follow that?
Not necessarily, because some of those can be really high. I mean, you can see a couple $1 suggested bid depending on the type of product it is. It goes back to really what you're comfortable with and the experience side of it. When you were going through is like, hey, I like to start with, 35 cents, whatever. This is probably based on what you've seen from your cost per click of running campaigns, what your bids are for your other campaigns. That's where that comes from, is just that experience. And it's more of a feel. There's not like, oh, this is with this product, I set this bid. There is no exact bid because you're going to adjust it later. You can't just start. So it's fine to just have like a general starting bid. And for most new sellers, I'm going to say start low, and we're going to slowly incrementally bring those up until you're starting to get impressions and clicks and orders. But otherwise, yeah, you're going to have something that's more you're comfortable with. The higher your bid, the faster you're going to get the data you need. And that's really what this is all about, is collecting data. We've said this a few times already. If you have a higher bid, you're going to get more impressions, you're going to get more clicks, so you have more data to make decisions off of.
Okay.
We want to make decisions off of data, not just on a whim.
Right. Okay. That's good to know. So kind of experience, or you don't necessarily have to follow.
Yeah. So like if you want to be aggressive and collect that data, there's a new campaign, I want to launch it as fast as possible, and I want to, get to where it's getting sales as fast as possible and optimize it as fast as possible. Start with a higher bid. If you want to be conservative, I'm more concerned about my budget and what my spend is, start with a lower one.